Welcome to this episode of the Fish Files, where we are going to go through all the varieties of bettas that you typically find when you go to an aquarium store. We're not really going to go into the wild species. There's 74 total species, maybe only 73 now. And I used to import quite a few wild species, but they're slowly getting endangered, unfortunately, because they're coming from an area of the world that's getting very overcrowded, and so their territory is disappearing. I can talk about betta macrostomas and betta samorans, other wild bettas, later on in the show. But more importantly, let's look at the bettas that we can buy in the aquarium store. And I'd like to go over what differentiates the price points of bettas, because at each level price point, these bettas get more and more difficult to breed. And the offspring, though, come out with beautiful shapes and colors. So we're going to go through why you'd pay $50 for a betta versus $5 for a betta in the pet store. All the same species, by the way. Betta splendens. Those are the only ones I'm going to be covering today. But Betta splendens covers a lot of varieties. And these cups, these are transportation cups. They're your typical 8-ounce betta cup. Some stores will display them for a short period of time in the stores. Typically, this is the smallest. It's about a quarter gallon. Smallest vessel that you'd want to keep a betta in, preferably something more like this size. Would be a good display tank for a betta. The reason it's safe to transport them in something small like this is because these are part of the labyrinth species we've covered before when we talked about the 10 easiest species to keep in an aquarium. Labyrinth species have gills, and they have an organ similar to a lung called the labyrinth that enables them to breathe air. They don't need an air stone in here. They can just pop up to the surface of water, breathe all the air they need, and they can survive quite a while in this little cup. I wish I could display these all together in here, but I'm sure you've all heard you cannot put male bettas together. You can put female bettas together. You can't put males together. You can't even put males with females unless you're trying to breed them, but then get the female separated, because after she lays her eggs, he'll kill her. The reason I'm mentioning all this is because I really want to compare these bettas. Let me show you the very basic show male betta. So the show male betta has finnage. It's called a veil tail betta too. It has finnage that's long, it's drapey, but as you can see, when it's displaying, let's see if we can make them display against this guy. Sometimes when the bettas see each other, or even their own reflection in a mirror, they'll puff up in fighting stance. Yeah, see how his gills flare out? Now he's displaying. So when he does flare out or display, you'll see that his fins don't connect. Primary reason veil-tail bettas are a little less expensive, $5, is because there's a big gap between the anal fin, the caudal fin, and the dorsal fins. Now let's step up to what's called a super delta. There's a show betta, super delta, and half moon. Those are the three, just based on finnage, basic bettas that you'll find in the pet store. After that, we're going into variations of the finnage, body type, and color patterns. These are basic, so take notes. This is called the Super Delta. Super Delta is a very beautiful fish. It's a step up from the show betta, typically around $10 in the aquarium store. And it's a Super Delta. You can see has a lot more finnage than a veil tail or show betta. His fins will almost connect. There'll be just a little gap between his caudal and dorsal fins. Usually the anal fin and caudal fins all connect together for super deltas, but the dorsal fin will be a little smaller. That's the only difference. Their color patterns, because they're more finnage on them, are a little more vibrant and visible, but it's twice the price. They live just as long. Bettas will probably never ever build a spaceship, because they don't even know the difference between their reflection and a true male intruder. But that's a very pretty fish. Now this one's the next step up. This is a half moon. Half moon means when it displays, all its fins connect in the shape of a half moon. So half moon betta. And I want to also mention colors on the bettas. Now I'll bring in a couple hundred half moons on a shipment, and I'll probably have 20 different color patterns. This one is a beautiful solid white pattern. I'll get them red, white, and blue, reds, blues. I get them in yellow and blues, which I'll talk about in a sec, called mustard gas patterns. Half moon bettas are another step up, typically about $15 in the aquarium store. The only thing about bettas is they're tails get featherier and bigger is that they can get a little more susceptible to other fish in the tank. If you're going to keep them in a community tank, other fish may nip at those fins. Just be wary of tank mates you put in with uber fancy bettas. All right, now we're going to go into some of the special variants of bettas. Those are the basic fin structures. And these have been bred, they say 1,000 years, but no one has historical proof. But we do know the King of Siam gave fighter bettas to an English diplomat, and he brought it back to England. And then there was another ichthyologist named Regani who actually named the betta Splendid, gave him his namesake. Until that time, they were bred for fighting. They were a gambling fish. And they're still used today for that purpose. It's a different kind of fish. These guys are really pansies. They'll fight each other, but it wouldn't be much of a fight. The fighter fish have small fins, they're larger, and they can take a punch. And that's what the King of Siam handed off. And because of that, they got their name Betta because the English diplomat was last visiting a tribe called the Betta, B-E-T-T-A-H tribe. They're a very fierce tribe. So he thought, these are fierce fish, and I'm gonna call them bettas. Let me stop for a sec. Have you subscribed yet? Let me give you a moment. Subscribe. It takes a lot of effort. Okay, on with the show. This is called a Crowntail Betta, is probably the second most common betta you'll find in the pet store outside of the show and female show bettas. It's a fun name because, as you can see, he has like a rooster crown. His feathery fins. He's intentionally bred that way. These guys are only slightly more expensive than the show betta. They're typically around $7-8 in the pet store. And they come in like the Betta Splendids, all kinds of pretty colors. Usually, though, they're solid colors, blues and reds. They only live 3 to 5 years. So if you get one that's huge and big and massive, figure he's already a year old. This guy's a juvenile. He's probably 6 months. Again, he could be a nice pet for you. Just feed him well. He's a little skinny. That guy came in a little skinny. They should have a little more filled out body. What's cool about bettas is during the Victorian era, there were a lot of fish kept in fish tanks. It was very popular in salons, and they were gouramis, paradise fish, and eventually bettas. Because they were, again, labyrinth species, they didn't need air stones, and they didn't have air stones, they didn't have electricity, so they did have aquariums. So what they did is lots of water changes, and obviously hardy fish that could handle low oxygen, and they didn't put a lot of fish in a fish tank. So this is called a Butterfly Betta, a really pretty variation, that one of my favorites. And Butterfly Bettas have a rim of color all around the edges of their fins. They're a half moon structure. Their finnage structure makes the half moon, but the color pattern has a rim all the way around the moon. And it could be red, it's usually white on a different color pattern. This one's a very cool red or purple, blue and white pattern. So he is a good example of a butterfly fish. And those are typically $20 in the aquarium store. So why do bettas fight, and why do they develop the labyrinth organ so they can breathe air? They live in a monsoon area. In monsoon areas, Siam, Cambodia, Laos, that area, during the dry season, the water dries up, and they live in an area it's swampy. It's actually, they're first domesticated because it turned out to be great areas for raising rice, and they were in rice paddies when they were first domesticated. But in nature, the Betta Splendids would find itself in puddles, and this is also its breeding time. Well, puddles have a limited amount of oxygen, and they, over time, developed the labyrinth lung so they could breathe air as well as pull oxygen through their gills in the water. But during breeding, they would hop into a little puddle and looking for their female. Or if they were in a very confined space, a little pond, when you found the female, it was time to mate. That's a whole different story. I won't go into it because it's brutal. But if there's another male in the area, in this limited, tiny little space, there's only room for one guy, so they fight. And they fight until one is driven off or dies. So they develop through nature to be a fighting species because of their limited area that they had to live and breed during the dry seasons. So that's they weren't bred to be fighters. They're fighters by nature. So you can imagine when they're bred to fight, how vicious they could be. That's why they became such a terrific, famous, I don't know if terrific's the right word, but famous bedding fish in Asia. Oh, this is fun. Now this is the next level up on finnage. This is called a rose petal betta. A rose petal betta, unlike the half moon, it has even more finnage. So not only does it go fully around like the half moon, it keeps wrapping. It's been overly bred so that its fins, in nature, this would never happen, but it's been bred so that the fins can't even fit around in a full circle, so they fold up on each other, looking like a petal of a rose. And so it's called a rose petal betta. This particular betta has good body conformation. He's not skinny. He's a good size. He's probably close to his full adult size. And he should live, again, 3 to 5 years. With those big rose petal fins, be careful putting them in with tank mates that are nippy. You'd never put a betta like this, for instance, with tiger barbs. Or even, believe it or not, African dwarf frogs. I've seen them go after the fins. Now I have a fun one because he doesn't have the fins quite as round as the rose petal, but what he has is amazing ventral fins that look like Dumbo Ear. If you know anything about the Disney character, little baby elephant that could fly, his name was Dumbo. He had big ears like this, and he flew off and was a hero of the circus. This guy has the same thing. He's bred to have these big ventral fins, and they are usually in the half moon pattern, but they're also, you can get Dumbo ears with what's called a round tail or plaquette, P-L-A-K-A-T, plaquette pattern. That's also the same body and fin structure as a fighter version of these bettas. The plaquette version has the same big Dumbo ears, but has just short fins all around its body. And the reason they breed them that way is because they really want to emphasize the ventral fins. I personally, and I think they're both great fish, but I personally like the half moon version of the Dumbo Ear Betta because they have both displays and they can make a really pretty scene. This is natural for bettas to just sit and rest. Don't freak out if your betta just sits and rests. In fact, you should leave a little platform for them somewhere. You can buy these in the store. They actually have like fake leaves that have a little suction cup that stick on the side of the container, so the betta can just, or a fish tank, so the betta can just lay down and sit there. They have such overemphasized finnage that they need to rest from time to time. And now I have a couple varieties, one brand new one on the scene. Well, everyone's gonna say, oh, I saw that a year ago, but called the Avatar Betta. I'm gonna save him for last, but we have also a terrific show koi betta. Show koi bettas come in all kinds of different variations and grades. This is a grade A show betta I'm going to show you. But before I do that, I want to show you a mustard gas, kind of a sinister name for a color pattern because it's supposed to be reminiscent of the mustard gas from World War I. But it has generally a bluish, greenish body with yellow finnage, like yellow gas spreading from the center of the body. This is a pretty pattern. He's a mustard gas betta, but normally you'd want to see that yellowish pattern go all the way to the edges of the fins. And I think I have one here. So sorry guy. This guy is much more closely related to a grade A mustard gas betta. This one has a proper coloration. The yellow comes from the body all the way to the edge. He's a little bit of different variant, but he has a dragon scale pattern. Dragon scales just mean a reflective, larger scale pattern on the betta fish. And it's a, if that's what you like, it's a very pretty pattern. He happens to have both. He has a mustard gas color pattern and dragon scales. So he's a cool betta to show you. Okay, now I'm going to go into some of your higher end bettas. This one is anywhere from $40 to $50 in the pet store. And you can get koi bettas as low as 20 bucks. But this guy, when you see the blues mixed in with the typical koi pattern, has a little red, a little black, and a little white. That's the koi pattern. But when you have one that's really densely packed with color and has good size and it has a little blue in it, that's a special show quality Koi Betta. I'm not going to get into nitpicky whether this is a Galaxy Betta, whether it's a candy cane Betta, whether it's a I'm not a Betta hobbyist, but there are distinctions in the Koi Betta color variation family. So if you have a particular knowledge of this color pattern, if you really think it's a Galaxy or a candy cane or just a show quality Koi Betta, let me know. I consider this, I'd actually call this a Galaxy Betta because it has a little blue spots on it. I brought them in, I imported them as show quality Koi Bettas, and that's what I'm selling them to the pet stores as. Yeah, so if you have a strong opinion about what color pattern this particular koi belongs to, please leave in the comment section. Now we have a new color pattern that you'll see in the pet stores, and these guys are in the $50 range, and it's called the Avatar Betta. The Avatar Bettas have a deep royal body or even black body with bright sky blue highlights. And it's supposed to be reminiscent of the movie Avatar with the people with the blue bodies. This guy is a pretty good example. So if you like the movie, get the fish. So these are the show Betta females, and show Bettas you can put in the same tank together as long as they're females. And when you put several together in a tank, it's called a harem. I didn't make that up. This, by the way, when you go in a pet store, these are juveniles. These are very small females. It's hard to avoid it, and it's not always the pet store's fault or my fault. Sometimes that's all the exporters have because they bred out and sold their larger ones. This is as big as I could get, for instance, this week. So these are two females. Female bettas, their body size gets just as large as the male, but their finnage doesn't get long. You can't create that long finnage in the female like you can in the male. So they always have a round tail pattern. But females determine the offspring. So if you want to create a half moon betta, if you want to breed half moon bettas, you have to have a half moon female. She won't look a lot different than a show female. A little rounder body, a little more finnage, but otherwise you wouldn't know the difference. You have to trust that the breeder has culled those fish and separated them properly, and that is a true half moon female that will bring out half moon offspring. And that's the same thing with the Dumbo Ear Bettas, all the variations, it comes from the female. That being said, I have here a koi female betta, and this has become a very popular fish because she displays color patterns just like the males. And again, you can put all the females together. You just can't put a male in with them. You'll chase them around to death. So this is a female koi betta. So it is difficult to tell the male from the female koi betta, and we've had some unique mistakes here in the warehouse from time to time. The primary differences in behavior. So if you do mix them up, the easiest way to tell a male from a female is to get a mirror and see if one displays itself. Now we're going to experiment. I have my net quick in case I don't want to ever damage any fish. But this is the male koi betta, and this is the female koi betta. And we'll just let them all see each other's territory and get a lay of the land and see how they interact. Like I said, I'm going to have my net handy in case the interaction goes south. We're going to do the same thing with two males. But in that case, we're just going to have the net handy. I just want to see how quickly they react. Generally, these aren't fighters, so I think we'll be safe. Now, this male's just noticing the female, I think. What I'd like to do is just put two bettas together with my net ready and just see if, these are betta splendens. They're not, and these are show betta splendens, so they're not really bred. They're definitely not bred for aggression. But let's put a couple together and let's just see how they interact with each other. This is the Avatar Betta, and this is the Dumbo Ear Half Moon Betta. And this one's the Butterfly Betta. And let's put the male koi betta. So no mirror required to see these guys display. Generally, they don't fight for a bit. They display against each other. And in almost every animal you watch on Wild Kingdom or any of those shows. Oh man, I just dated myself. But they will display before they fight, hoping one of them backs down and no fights required. So let's, as soon as they begin displaying, I'm gonna separate them. Wow, okay, it's time to, you do not, all right. So he's Mr. Aggressive, the Avatar Roundtail, which makes sense. Roundtail pattern's the closest to the fighter pattern. And the Dumbo Ear is next. He's the next meanie. That's surprising. I would have thought it would have been the Koi Betta. Dumbo Ear looks like he's the least fit to fight. Okay, he's close to getting nippy. So that's the experiment. I was just curious. But it's not determinant on finish. Seems like it's more personality. So that was my little experiment. I hypothesized that the more round, fatter body fish would be the most aggressive because they're closer to the bred fighter Betta splendens. So it looks like it's based on personality, not finnage and body type when it comes to Betta splendid male aggressive behavior, just on this little tiny experiment. Of course, that's not real science. But quick note on the other 73 species of the Betta family. Betta macrostoma, which I used to sell, oh, they're beautiful fish, $200 a pair. I no longer import because they're on the endangered species list now. Just happened, I think 4 years ago. And it's because of habitat loss. Everything's getting paved in that part of the world. It's unfortunate. And in this case, macrostoma is in danger of disappearing from the planet. There are another dozen that can be imported from time to time, but again, they're wild caught and they're difficult to find. Not expensive like the macrostomas, so you can typically wholesale them for $3 or $4. I don't have any in the warehouse now. I've been putting them on order, but they haven't been caught, so they haven't been exported. If I'm saying any of these wrong, you guys can go after me in the comments section. I don't handle these very often, but some of these species are fun because you can put the males together and they're good community fish. So with that being said, that's the world of bettas in the pet store. So most importantly, get a betta tank. If you like any of these species that we've shown to you, well, it's one species, but if you like any of these variations of the species we've shown to you today, we have a link on our site that can take you right to a place where you can find all of them, or please visit your local pet store, not the national chains, but your local mom and pop pet store, and they'll have them, or if they don't have them, they can get them for you. So thank you again for following us, and we hope to see you on the next, I guess you call it an episode, next show, next installment.